Hello everyone, this is Tim, and this is going to be a video about house rules, optional rules, and Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition and the old school Renaissance OSR games. I am sort of torn, I guess, between all these different types of games that I like. I talked in a recent video how I like OSR games, I'm liking what I see in 5th edition, though there's some things that kind of bug me, but I think if I tweak a few things, I'll be able to run it the way that I enjoy. I also like story games to a limited extent, so there were some things in the 5th edition Dungeon Master's Guide that reminded me of like Dungeon World and a few other games like that, games run by the Apocalypse World by the Apocalypse. So it was cool to see all those different types of optional rules available for me to sort of flick on and off and make the game that would be enjoyable for me. And I think, sort of play it your way is something that's coming back into WotC D&D. It was more of a thing in TSR D&D where there was more of a expectation of the GM to make their own rules, to rule on the fly, to make their own rulings at the table. I find that as a general rule, as a tendency, not really like a stereotype, I guess, but um, where those who played Wizards of the Coast D&D tend to be more rules as written, rules by the book, and it seems like a little bit more of that optional rule, house ruling, tinkerer type GM is making a comeback with 5th edition D&D, and I'm very much that. If you've watched any of my videos, you realize or see any of the comments and on other people's videos, I'm always talking about house rules and optional rules, and I sort of look at all of the D&D games, versions, editions, basic, advanced, all that stuff as a big pile of optional rules to pick and choose from whenever I run a campaign. And take that another step up. I look at all of the RPGs that are out there, and I'll pick and choose rules from various systems, rules that stand out to me, and I plug them into games. Make a sort of a Frankenmonster sort of thing. If I run D&D 5th edition, I'm going to try to stick more with the system itself, but there are some optional rules in there, and ones I'm going to plug in that I think would be make for a unique experience, a sort of culture of play at my table. It has like a unique way of handling all of these things. I'm trying to bring in more of like I guess like immersive role playing, being in character, and things like that than maybe some other people would be playing. But I'm still sort of in that between casual and immersion. Still sort of I guess I'm leaning more towards immersion these days, but I'm still in the middle. I'm not like on the extremes. Um, but so without further ado, some of the things I've been thinking about. I put a quick little video out earlier about optional rules for D&D when my folks were in town, my wife's family, and I just sort of did like some music, and I'll put a link down below. But some of the ideas that I had, my sort of gut reactions at first, have changed. I forgot to mention the first time I've gone through and filmed all these clips how I want to do character creation. I don't actually like the way that the player's handbook is organized as far as what to do first, and this would be a slight change. So it's actually modified in my player's handbook. I put various pages. I like start here and go there. But the first step would be to determine ability scores. And in this campaign that I'm going to hopefully run in the future, I want them to roll 46, drop the lowest, from the first stat down to the last stat, straight down the row. I don't. I want just to incorporate more randomness and less picking and choosing, optimizing, moving, character stats from here to there. I want to try to get away from power gaming as much as possible, and I find that randomness is the best way to do that. So determine ability scores first. Uh, I'll mention later there's no charisma, and I'm including sanity, so there's still 6 stats. Choose a race would be the next step. Step 3 would be choose your background and personality and all those various things that go along with that, ideals, flaws, so forth. The fourth step is choose a class. So once you have all your stats, you figure out how what you are and how you grew up. Now it's time just to pick your class. It seems to make more logical sense to me. It sort of flows better in that way. So like with the determined ability scores, that's not till like page like 173 in the player's handbook. And for me, that just seems like so wrong. Like that's so far back there. I want to sort of if I could like pluck that out and put it in the beginning of the book, I would do that. Um, the after the class, there's a next step is come together. I want the background and class to be the only things that give the players equipment at the beginning of a campaign. I don't want to do the whole shopping thing. You have this much gold, let's go buy a bunch of crap. I just want it to be just given to them so you can start the game and just head on from there. Yes, they're going to have shopping trips later, I'm sure, in the town and weapon shop, armor shop, and so forth, but I want to include that in the campaign itself. So that's pretty much how I would do character creation. And because of the various house rules below that I'm going to talk to you later in the video. That's going to modify some of the classes. But the classes that I want to include, and I want to limit them: Cleric, Fighter, Ranger, Rogue, and Wizard. To me, these really cover a wide gamut of ways to play, and I just don't like some of the other classes. So just try to keep it small. I almost didn't include the Ranger, but having that outdoorsy type in the mix, I think, can go a long way. So, yeah, I want to try to limit the options there to make character creation faster. I find that sometimes when there's too many options, it can give players sort of like a deer in the headlights look. So, I'm going with more randomness, less options right off the bat. As far as races go, it's really going to depend on what campaign setting that I come up with. I think I'm going to try to do Cyrodion, which is out of print ice Iron Crown Enterprises setting, but it's sort of like fantasy Australia, and there's lots of non-human races that are running around, so that's probably what I'll end up doing. All right, the first change I'm going to make is to remove charisma and the associated, charismatic skills, basically like diplomacy and things like that. I did a recent video about just having players role play out those situations and I guess use more of a GM fiat sort of gut instinct, sort of just go with the flow sort of outlook on that. And that's what I want to do the next time I run Dungeons and Dragons. So, I basically want to get rid of those social dice rolls. I don't want things to just boil down to clattering on the table for those situations. So that would be something that, yes, people disagree with. They would consider me kind of extreme in that regard, but it's something that I want to do. I want to lean more on player ability than the character sheet, the things, the numbers and stats that are on the sheet in front of them. So it's a little tricky because some of the backgrounds need edited and changed. Some of the classes need to have additional skills added. But I've kind of gone through and it's sort of considered maybe blasphemous, but I've circled skills that I've removed and just wrote in other skills. So my fifth edition player's handbook has been, like sort of mutilated now. I have like page numbers and references that aren't in the text, which would be, one of my critiques of the game is that it's kind of tricky to find out, where certain sections are easily, like in the text, like refer to page blah blah blah. It's not in the text, so I've had to write that in. I've already written stuff in that I've changed my mind on, so I need to go back and like put some like white sticker tape or something over it, so it's not all it's not all like gibberish and scribbles all over the place. But so yeah, I'm gonna have to edit some things with that. Some of the spell descriptions are probably gonna have to change as well. Things that would bump up those social skills perhaps or give you a bonus. I have to go through that and check. But um, oh, and another thing too is because I'm removing charisma, spells that call for a charisma saving throw are now going to be a sanity saving throw. And sanity is, I guess this would be like the number two roll here. It's going to be an additional stat that I'm going to use instead of charisma. It's not really replacing charisma. It's just I saw those. That is one of the optional rules in the Dungeon Master's Guide, and I like that because I tend to incorporate horror themes into my fantasy. Even no matter what I run, there's some sort of horrific element that gets thrown in there. It's just, I guess it's like my bread and butter. It's just where my imagination tends to go. I had sort of a dark, morbid imagination. So like games like Lamentations of the Flame Princess, really kind of jive with me for the most part. Sometimes it's a little too out there, but it's not too hard to rewrite things and do things differently. And it wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if I run Lamentations of the Flame Princess modules in fifth edition. So, um, so that's cool. But yeah, the The Sanity rules are on page 258 and 264 of the Dungeon Master's Guide. So I'm going to add in a little bit of madness and sanity. Maybe the sanity stat will slowly get eaten away, depending on what the characters see and bump into. So that would be optional rule number 2. Number 3, I'm not too sure about this one. This is one where I'm sort of 50-50 on. Instead of a static proficiency bonus that you would add to like say you're proficient in something, you add like a +4. They have an optional rule in the Dungeon Master's Guide for a dice type. So if it's like a +4, I think you roll like a D8. So I like that element of more randomness in there, and I think I'm going to include that. That optional rule with the proficiency dice is on page 263 of the Dungeon Master's Guide. The fourth, I don't know if it's really an optional rule, but I'm not going to be using feats in my game. And in the game itself, feats are optional, so I guess I'm just ignoring that optional rule, but I felt like I had to sort of state that out there for those that are going to be players if I ever get a chance to run this. I think I'm probably, sadly, not going to be able to run something like this until November at my local convention, but I'm going to try to sort of play test all these optional rules together and see how it goes, sort of experiment, sort of mess around with 5th edition and do it my way and see how that goes. But I'll definitely make sure that people know that this is like a modified version of 5th edition. Rule number 5, and I think I'm getting this sort of idea from the story games that I played, sort of messing around narrative control. Inspiration. That's a part of the game, and it's something that I think is cool. It's different. It feels a little bit different than like the old school games, but I like it. Some of those story games that I've played, having the input from the players and doing different things, getting little bonuses like hero points and things. I like that thing. I like that ability of players to give a little bit more oomph to something. But they also mentioned story points, and instead of doing like keeping inspiration and story points separate, I'm going to combine them. So inspiration is going to be the same as story points. So they're going to be flowing around the table. I'm going to be handing them out. So that currency of coins, bouncing around the table, I think is going to be really interesting to see how that works, to see how that input from all the players can really change things. I love when I'm surprised as a GM, and I think by doing this, I will be surprised more, and therefore I will be more entertained, more apt to take things in a new direction, take that input, change it, tweak it, and then bounce it back at them. So plot points are on page 268, and I'm going to go with option 1 and option 2. Option 3 is really going in a direction of a GM-less game, or where the GM duties pass around the table, and I don't want to go that far. While I have had a few good experiences with story games with no GMs, by and large, I don't like that, especially when it's about like the fantasy genre. I think maybe this is tradition, nostalgia, but I do like a stronger GM role in my fantasy game, especially like Dungeons and Dragons. But this would be me sort of experimenting. I might decide that plot points are terrible, but I want to try them out. I want to see how it works, and I want to bring in a little bit of story game flavor into my D&D, and I think that's going to happen with this optional role. Okay, number 6, XP character advancement. The chart that's in the player's handbook. I want to extend levels 1 through 6. I don't like that idea of playing like a session or two and leveling up right away. I really like that, like sort of low fantasy. You don't have a lot of spells. You have to keep track of things a little bit closer. And I guess this is maybe more of that old school mentality where you have 6 torches and you want to try to manage all your equipment and not really blow too much of this. And if I shoot too many crossbows, I won't be able to use my crossbow anymore. So I do like that sort of, some people might call it like accounting work, but it seems to be more gritty, and I think it's kind of cool for the players because they can keep track of things and they have more to do when it's not their turn. But I want to extend levels 1 through 6. Those are my favorite levels whenever I play D&D. I'm also considered just telling players when they level up, but for some reason in D&D, I think the XP there, keeping track of stuff is something that players also enjoy, so I don't want to take that away from them. Just some numbers to throw at you. So, first is 0 XP, second would be 1200 XP, third 2400, fourth 4800, fifth 9600, sixth is 16,300. So sort of double things and then sort of level it off. And then after that, you just follow uh, the regular XP totals that are in the player's handbook. So actually, I modified my player's handbook and just wrote those totals beside it. I made sure to not cover up the original stuff that's in the book in case I want to ever play in someone else's 5th edition game. All that information is still there, but I want to have a handy reference when I look things up to see what my house rules are in the book, and I think it's going to work out pretty well. Number 7, success at a cost. This is something that I read in the DMG, and it really reminded me of Dungeon World. And I got to play in one Dungeon World campaign, and I really enjoyed that sort of, yes, you succeed, but you have this other thing that happened, or a slight wrinkle in your aims. Um, it adds more detail and takes things in a slightly different direction. It adds complications that need solved, and I think that is good. You sort of, even though you succeed, there's details there that you know influence things and just add more interesting elements at the table. The page number, I keep forgetting to put that in there. For the success at a cost optional rule is the DMG page 242. Number 8 is, this will be my OSR influence here. I want to go back to side initiative. The first time that I used side initiative um, was with the black box D&D, but I actually sort of forgot about that. I played Rollmaster on the games, 3rd edition things for a while. But when I ran Labyrinth Lord, after running a bunch of 3.5 D&D, I realized how simple and easy it was on me as a GM to just, every round I roll a dice, one of the players roll a dice, whoever's higher, they go first. And it's more chaotic. You can actually have 2 turns back to back if you roll like high or low or low or high. And I like that. I like that sort of chaos in battle. And it was simple, easy to keep track of. I didn't have to like have cards or initiative trackers or anything like that. So I really liked side initiative. Another aspect I like side initiative for is that it's sort of teamwork and things like that seem to happen a lot easier. You don't have to hold your action or wait till your initiative lines up with the player that you want to help out. So it's simpler. I like it. I always liked simple initiative systems. I've incorporated simple initiative systems into games that don't have them. So side initiative is something that I definitely want to do, and it's an optional rule in the DMG, page 270. They use a D20, and like Labyrinth Lord uses a D6. So simultaneous initiative usually happens when you roll the same number. The DM rolls like a 17 on a D20, and players roll a 17. So it's going to happen less, but there is still that um, rare possibility of having simultaneous initiative. So I think I like rolling the d20. Um, it's just the way that 5th edition does it. So I'm gonna try to go more with what the 5th edition does. Number 9, slow natural healing, 267 in the DMG. Now this is more of my OSR influence. I don't like the fast healing. I guess it's more like Conan, where he takes a big swig and he feels better. But I think it's really just that healing completely every single day. That's one of the things that instantly bugged me whenever I read whenever I read the player's handbook. It just rubbed me the wrong way. I like that idea of like you're getting hurt and it takes time to heal. So yeah, that is one reason I picked that. Number 10 also sort of goes along with that. Lingering injuries, DMG page 272. Whenever you take a big hit, a big chunk of your hit points all at once, or you get down to like 0 hit points, I want there to be some sort of like scar or wound or something that just stays with you, that reminds you of that the thing that just happened to you. So it's also sort of good instead of like an option for death. Something tough can happen to you. So you can have some sort of other problem to deal with while you're alive. So that's cool. Number 11, massive damage. DMG page 273. I like the idea of being able to really just hurt a creature, and that goes also for the players too, where if they get just wiped out, like big chunk of their hit points get taken away. I want there to be some sort of consequence for that, and also it can be a benefit for the players when their characters take a big chunk out of like a big beefy monster. I want it to have some sort of impact on what happens, the story, the things that are going on at the table. So massive damage, I think, is cool. Number 12, no opportunity attacks. I have never liked these since third edition. These are sort of like a subcategory under reactions. And I think some of the spells are cool for that. So those would be the exception to this. So those would be the only reactions that can happen in the game, unless there's like a class ability that says they get like a bonus action or something like that. But opportunity attacks are just gone. Number 13, um, there's instant death rules in the player's handbook where you die if you go to negative your hit point total. I guess your maximum hit points is what they describe it as. I don't. That's too much. That's too. I want it to be harsher. So instant death happens at negative con. So that way it puts a little bit of emphasis on the con stat. You want to beef that up a little bit, and it also just shows you like if you get like wiped out by like a massive fireball, you're gonna die. I want death to be more of a threat, and that's probably why I like a lot of the OSR games. Fifth edition is going to be less deadly, even with these optional rules that I include, than the games I'm used to running. So I feel like it's a compromise. The players might not think that, but again, anybody who sits down at my table is going to know what optional rules are in place. So if they sign up to play, they agree to the rules that I put forward. And I think that's what you should do with any group. If you have optional rules, just lay it all out on the table. If there's something they really don't like, just okay, we'll put a line through this one, see how that goes. You have to have a little bit of give and take. All right, number 14, traps do not always go off. This is something that's from like Labyrinth Lord, Basic and Expert D and Dungeons and Dragons. Just I like the idea that spells can't, or not spells, traps can fail. They can be designed to go off, and the designer might have done a bad job. The person who crafted the trap might not have known exactly what they were doing. So I like the idea of the possibility of a trap failing. I think I'd have to look it up in Labyrinth Lord. I think it's like a D6 roll, and certain numbers it doesn't go off. So I'll have to maybe make that a D20 roll, make it a range or percentage, whatever. But I like the idea of you stepped on a trap, you hear a click noise, but nothing happens. Then you can kind of look up and see like a blade right above your head. So it makes for fun moments at the table where someone's like, "Ooh, I almost died." If that trap didn't fail, it would have like whacked me in the face. So that's something that I want to see in fifth edition games. All right, number 15. Yeah, I'm getting kind of up there on house rules and optional rules, but that's just the way I roll. I want spellcasters to announce that they are casting a spell before initiative is rolled. And again, I'm going to be using side initiative here. So yes, I'm going to be casting a spell this turn. You don't really have to tell me what spell. Just the fact that your arms are moving around, you're spitting out some gibberish, just so people know that you're casting a spell. It's obvious. I want it to be more. I want the spellcasters to be more of a target. The other side is going to know, oh crap! If I don't whack this wizard in the face with an axe, something's going to come hit me. And I guess I want to just bring spellcasters down a little bit. Yes, they're going to have unlimited cantrips, and I don't want to get rid of that because I think that's part of the flavor of fifth edition. But I want to make it so that those cantrips can be interrupted if someone gets the jump on you. So if you take any damage as a spellcaster before you can unleash that spell, it automatically fizzles. You don't lose a spell slot, so but that turn you're not going to be able to cast that spell. So I want to put more of an emphasis on like fighters and rogues and things like that that can just get in there and stab the magic user. Basically, as long as you do like 1 point of damage, that spell is going to be a fizzle. So I guess I gotta just want to bring spellcasters down a little bit. It seems like they probably are too powerful. So that's kind of what I want to do with that. Okay, and the last house rule that I have so far, I'm sure there'll be more, uh, is shields block successful attacks a percentage of the time. I get this house rule from Dragon Warriors, and in that game it's a d6, and if you roll 1, you successfully blocked an attack. I'm not exactly sure what dice I'm going to roll for this. I might keep it as a d6. I might change it. It might be a d20 roll, kind of sticking with 5th edition. But instead of giving like a flat bonus to armor class, I like that idea that a certain percentage of the time you're gonna roll and you just get your shield and just block it. It feels like you're doing something when you do that in a game. When you have just a +2, it doesn't really, I don't know, it doesn't sort of fill my mind with the image of a shield, coming up and blocking a sword that's coming right at you. But when you roll this d6, like, okay, simple situation here. I make an attack, it beats your armor class. You're to that point where, okay, here comes the damage. But with this house rule, you said, hey, wait a minute, I have a shield. You roll it, you block it. It feels like the system mechanics make it feel like you actually blocked a successful attack from like whacking you in the face, or in the leg, or in the arm. So I really like that sort of. I guess it brings it into like the immersive thing for me. It makes shields feel more important. And with that, I thought that like a magical shield would be able to block a higher percentage of attacks coming your way. So this makes shields more important, and I sort of like that. I think it feels in some way maybe like a White Wolf soak roll, but there's more dice rolling there, and people could argue that maybe they don't want that. But again, I like that aspect of feeling like you're blocking an incoming attack that would have done some serious damage had you not had a shield. So far, that's all the optional rules that I have figured out for 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons. But for me, it's just sort of like just a way of modifying the game to suit my taste. D&D my way. If you've made it this far in the video, what are some of the optional rules that you would like to use from the Dungeon Master's Guide or the Player's Handbook, or just from other games, or just ways that you want to do things that you came up with because you were playing the game? You'd like, yeah, I don't really like this thing. I want to incorporate something else. I'd love to hear any optional rules that you have. Just put them down below if you feel like making a video response and going through all the things like I've done and reasons why you like certain rules. That'd be cool to see as well. I'm a newbie to 5th edition. I've not had a chance to play or run it, but this is sort of the mental exercise I've done to just see what I would do if I got a chance to actually run the game. So yeah, I'd love to hear your feedback, and I'll talk to you all later.